Of this in so many degrees for so many minutes. Indian chef produces wonderful things from intuition, improvising. The chapter 4 on order and chaos shows how Indians are very comfortable with uncertainty, and uncertainty, creativity, unpredictability, flux are at the heart of individuality, Indian individuality. Whereas Westerners are taught to be, Western religion teaches them to be more relying on dogma, order, fixation. And any dogma-oriented, order-oriented is less individualistic. So Westerners, conformity with religion, conformity with one book, conformity with one particular deity, conformity with one church, is not individualistic as far as religion goes. They may be more individualistic, they have a high lifestyle and money, and they can have hairstyles and clothes and travel around and say I'm very individualistic. But those who are Christian have very little improvisation, whereas I as a Hindu have much more flexibility in my Ishta Devata. I can do this ritual or do that ritual or whatever. I'm not led by a congregation, one guy teaching, everybody has to comply and obey. And this comes from a whole history of obedience. God in Christianity, Judaism, Christianity and Islam, the primary idea is obedience. Primary idea. And the human disobedience by Adam and Eve, and disobedience by others, and disobedience by others, is called sin. So the whole story is God's edict for obedience and man's disobedience creating sin. And then the resulting outcome of that, and the three Abrahamic religions have different versions of that single idea. God's obedience, man's disobedience, and all the problems that come out of that. So this fixation with the obedience as the ideal rather than going inward. See, if my faith says that I cannot go inward and have my observe, watch my own consciousness and get my own insight, that would be very individualistic. But if my faith says that I have to copy the history of that guy and what he said, basically obey that, I'm being less individualistic, more following a certain institution method. So while Westerners are more individualistic in business, in commerce, in freedom, in travel, these kind of things, when it comes to religion, Westerners have very little freedom to deviate from their particular denomination's demands. Indians are not denominational. You go and look at a church has a roster of members. It's a very old thing. Now in America we started having members, church has a list of members and all that. But you know, you go to Encyclopedia Britannica or you go to some website and you look at how many people are members of various denominations. They tell you Southern Baptists, so many million, Baptists, so many million, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, Lutherans, blah blah blah. Every denomination has a very formal list of who are members. When you ask a person, are you an Episcopalian? He'll say, yeah, I'm an Episcopalian. The other guy will say, I'm Southern Baptist. The other guy will say, I'm Mormon. Very clear. I don't see, if you ask a Hindu, he will not say, I am this. Very few, very orthodox people will say that. Most will say, on Monday I do Shiv Vrat, and on Navratri I do that, and on this one I go and celebrate this and that. I kind of ad hoc mix match more easily for Hindus. So more individualism in that respect. And you see a family, where you see my family, my grandmother did something, my grandfather doing some havan, and my one son going to this temple, the other one doing that. A lot of freedom. And so that's because the argumentative nature and the individual nature, the idea of Swadharma. I explained this. The idea of Swadharma is the ultimate individualism, which says, like we have on the web, we have my websites, my favorites, my documents. So we have my Dharma. Okay. So just like on your desktop is individualized and is not one uniform for everybody. You can have your desktop, you can have my favorites, my whatever. In the case of spirituality, faith, I can have my tradition, my Dharma. It's called Swadharma. Now you can't have my Christianity. You can't. There is no Christianity. For a Baptist, it is particular interpretation. He will not accept Lutheran in the same church. He will not. Lutheran has got his idea. The church defines what is the Lutheran view. Every Lutheran follows that. The Lutheran website will tell you, to be a Lutheran, you must comply with the following rules. 1, 2, 3, you sign up for that. If you don't, you can't learn. So, this is belief-based. Belief is standardized, canonized, institutionally controlled. Institutions, a given church passes resolution on do we allow gays or not, and that becomes the institutional position. All the members follow that. There is dissent, argumentation, and then they keep putting it back for vote, and one day it gets turned over, and that becomes a new policy. Should women become priests or not? Each denomination got a policy. That's a policy. We don't have policies like that. We have guidelines, but even Manusmriti says that the highest dharma is your swadharma, your dharma. Then, so there's many kinds of dharma. There's jati dharma, which is sort of uniform by the elders of the jati. There's varna dharma, there's ashram dharma, there's your dharma for your desh, and then the ultimate dharma is swadharma, my dharma, based on my guna, my conditions, my circumstances, my state of evolution. This is why we are able to accept that some guy needs to be into obedience for very tamasic people. Too much freedom is not good. Because it's like children who need some discipline. If you tell them you can improvise the way you drive, you can do whatever, they get in trouble. You can't improvise. You can't, when you're learning music, junior guys taught to copy and repeat the same beat. Only a very advanced maestro goes beyond normative thinking and uniformity and standardization. Is allowed to go break the mold. That is the highest in our tradition. Dancer, same way, you can improvise. But when your starting point is uniformity. So a Hindu view would be that the Abrahamic religions are for beginners because there's a lot of obedience, very little improvisation, very little deviation from standardized normative approach. So I would argue that there is far more individualism in as far as religiosity is concerned, far more religion, individualism in our tradition. I also explained in this book, Dharma cannot be equated as religion for this very reason. Because religion is conformity. And that conformity is God gives this one final prophet or one son some edicts, and that has to be followed, and there's no such thing as I had an enlightenment experience, I'm following mine. Or I'm following Raman Maharshi because he was enlightened and nothing to do with what any text says, I'm following my guru. The idea that there is a living master who is enlightened is very scary to the Abrahamic religions. Because in the Abrahamic religions, you might not know this, but to be a saint, one has to be dead. You can't have living saints. In the Christian church, they have had tens of thousands of saints. They have a list of them. And in which date each one was canonized, by which pope, and what was his accomplishment, what miracles he performed that made him worth being a saint. Not one saint in the history of Christianity was made a saint while they were alive. They all had to be saints only after they're dead. Why? Because a living saint would be a threat to the institutional authority.
True. The
living saint could say, I am enlightened, I have the ultimate knowing, I have reached unity consciousness, and I'm telling you this. Whatever these church people are saying, a bunch of babus and Europeans, they don't know. People will go to the living saint, they will not go to the institution. So, to create institutional authority, you have to get rid of the living saint tradition. Christianity did that. Many mystics were actually persecuted and killed. And those who were canonized as saints were only after death, because the dead guy is safe, he can't talk back. He can't teach anything, he can't be a threat. You see what I'm saying? And you have to be dead for 5 years, that makes sure that you're really dead. in rare examples like Mother Teresa, they can waive the 5 year and make it 3 years. But you got to make sure the guy is gone dead. A dead saint, canonized as saint, becomes property of the church. He's like a brand, he's like a mascot. I can do fundraising in his name. I can have schools and colleges. Now I can make up whatever I want about him. He's not going to argue back. He's kind of my property. So the living saint tradition versus the dead saint tradition. Yeah? The living enlightenment in us as Swachchitanand, living enlightenment in us, versus one person in history only had that experience, nobody else. No Christian is allowed to say that he is Jesus and he can have the same experience that Jesus had. He cannot. No Muslim will agree that he has the potential, maybe difficult, But among all the Muslims, some people will achieve the potential of having the exact same experience as Muhammad. They cannot. It only happened once, it never happened, you won't even have the potential. But I'm allowed to say that I have the same potential in me as any Rishi ever had. I can because I'm Satchitana, I'm the exact same thing that he is. I'm not any different. Whether I realize it or not is up to me. You see? So this is a huge difference between the individualism and freedom. They keep saying they are more free, but I'm pointing out reasons why we are more free. These are all ideas of freedom. We don't have the bondage to history. They are bondage to history. Bondage to dead profit. Bondage to one event, one book, one canon, one church that we can enforce it. We don't have that. So this is a very big difference. Now the second question was what? Vegetarianism. Okay. So lot of people in Western religions are turning vegetarian for health reasons. Health reasons. It's all about what's good for me according to medical science. It's not rights of that animal. Then there is animal rights. There are animal rights. A lot of animal rights are Hindu influence in the West. This is the idea of earth is sacred and Hindu experience, Hindu idea. And I explain very clearly in this book. The cosmos is not divine presence. That is called pantheism, and that is a pagan idea which is banned in Christianity. In Islam, if you say the earth is sacred, even ask a informed Muslim, is the Kaaba sacred? They'll say no, it's a holy place, but it's not sacred. Sacred means divine presence, like in our murtis, there's divine presence. You do Pran Pratishtha, there's divine presence. So for us, there's divinity present in so many places. And that is considered idol worship and is banned in those traditions. Because divinity is only external to the cosmos, not present in the cosmos. God created the cosmos like somebody makes a clock or a machine or a computer and turns it on and it works. But God's immanence and presence is not the same way as we see it. So when we see the idea of killing an animal and eating as a karma, it is not the same logic for them to be vegetarian. Their logic is different. They may also decide not to eat. They may be a better vegetarian, more rigorous than we are. Many of them are more rigorous than we are. But philosophically and metaphysically, they are not doing it for the same reason. And when they say we will protect the environment, in fact, Westerners have become cleaner in the environment now in the last 30, 40 years than Indians. They're very good at it. But it is not that the environment is sacred, has its own rights. It's because we humans, if we have a dirty environment, we're bad for our health. The fish industry will die and be bad for our economy. The air will get polluted and we'll have to do more cleanup. So, environment is our property. God made the world as man's property to exploit. Animals included. Bible is very clear. God made animals and world for man's pleasure. In the early time, even women were made for that. But later days are reformed. Yeah. But the idea that all of this is sacred is very Hindu idea. We ask Mother Earth's forgiveness when the child is going to begin to start walking, because I'm going to walk on the Mother Earth. When we harvest, we chant mantras, we do it in a certain way at a certain time, because we want to do it very ethically, not over harvest, because we may be hurting the plant. We are required to do that. And you see, there is no such thing as this is all a product for man's consumption, and we basically can use it and exploit it because God made it for us. But this is true in the case of the Abrahamic religions. Meat eating is sanctified as something God has given for you. So that is, and you should also understand, people are translating yajna as sacrifice. Don't translate it as yajna as sacrifice. Sacrifice is human sacrifice that then got turned into other ideas of sacrifice. Human sacrifice existed in some of these Middle Eastern societies. And then God decides that He will be the final human sacrifice, Jesus. Jesus is considered in Christianity as human sacrifice to therefore end future need for human sacrifice. This is true. And the whole, I have a friend in Princeton who's big Westerner, she's a Catholic and she's a scholar of Catholicism and become very famous and popular now for writing a very provocative interpretation. And she gives a lot of interpretation of the importance of human sacrifice and then replacing it with symbolic alternatives. So now it is symbolically like when you are eating the body of Christ and drinking his blood, these kind of rituals. So you are symbolically enacting that sacrifice to participate in that sacrifice because you don't want to do it, really do it, so you participate in it symbolically. How the whole system based on, number one, obedience, edicts from God, number two, man's disobedience turning into sin, and then the remedy is sacrifice. So when we are doing yagna, it has nothing to do with that. Yagna is a non-translative. So for us, going back to your question, vegetarianism is a different rationale. Sometimes you have different rationales leading to the same end result in terms of what you do, but your thought process is quite different in that case. No Westerner would say that, this, like I had a dog who died 2 years ago, and I had a lot of experiences about this being a child from a previous life in our family. And so many times, everybody in the family felt that there's something very amazing about this dog's presence. Now, Christian, Jewish, Islamic people can't relate to that, can't understand what this guy is saying. They would not think of an animal that we've ever had an animal life in our past. They would not think that way. They would not. But when Buddha got enlightenment, and a lot of Hindu enlightened beings felt the same way. Buddha says, I recall, I have been a butterfly, I've been an insect, I've been an elephant, I've been this, I've been a snake, I've been a rat, I've been this. I recall all that. And I've been in this place, and I've been in that place, I've been born in this tribe, in that place. He had a sudden, instant flash of past, thousands of lives, all happening now. He experienced that. So our tradition is that you are bringing in your prarabdha, in your deep, deep unconscious, you're bringing your collective experience of so many lives and shaping who you are. So our relationship with animals and plants and sacred nature is very, very different than these other traditions, even though they may be vegetarian.
I'm sure we can spend the whole night here. I'm just going to have 3 more people who are waiting ask their questions and we'll wrap it up. And then we can talk.
While listening to a very informative lecture, I would like to ask some devil's advocates questions. Number one, non-Hindu complain about assimilation of Hindu octopus by Hindu octopus. Number two, they say, while you're talking, the philosophy is good, but your social system is so indiscriminate and inhuman. Number three, if it is a sacrifice, what is the sacrifice bali in the yajna? And they claim that Hindu, before the Shankaracharya, Hindu used to eat meat, which is compulsory after the Shraddha. Can the Hindu reject karma and Punarjanma theory and image worship and being Hindu?
Okay, so I have to first remember which one is the question. What was the first one? Octopus. So Hindus also assimilate. There is in chapter 4, I've described Hindu acculturation contrasted with Western digestion. I explained that. I explained the Hindu acculturation contrasted with Western digestion. The difference is illustrated when a lot of Hindus and Buddhist thought were exported to China, Japan, Southeast Asia. There was no invading army imposing it. Those guys brought it in. They sent their students, like we sent students to Harvard, to bring back knowledge. It was not imposed on them. There was never an attempt, when India was very strong and powerful compared to these other Asian countries, there was never an attempt to install a governor and collect taxes from them. like the Westerners did. So the circumstances under which the knowledge was exported, the culture was exported, was not power-oriented. Historically, the West did that power-oriented. Expansion of Christianity, Islam, or the sort. The Hindu did not try to change the history of the Chinese, even when the whole Chinese became Buddhists and they looked at India as a mother civilization, or Japan, or Mongolia, or any of them. The Hindu did not impose their language, replace Mandarin, and give them a new sense of history, install viceroys. So it is very different than the spread of Western universalism and the spread of Islamic universalism, where it was control-oriented, change the language, change the history, make them point to Makkah, that kind of thing. We never said point to Banaras and all those things, never did that. So the Hindu octopus which assimilates has had a different characteristic. It is more like I'll assimilate you, but once you've been assimilated, you will retain your identity as part of me. It's kind of like that. So, in fact, I would say there is an opposite criticism. Opposite criticism is we assimilate the guy and we let him be his own jati. Rather than saying now you no longer have to have the jati. It works both ways. If you assimilate the Western way and you eliminate his distinctiveness, in a sense you destroyed that distinctiveness, but in a sense you also destroyed the basis for prejudice. You see. So whereas in our case we've said you can join, you cannot join, you can retain your identity, you can call it a new identity, but we're not imposing a one uniform thing on you. So this is my response to the first issue. Second issue is a big difference between the ideal and the lived reality of society. This is very true. This is true of all cultures. You might not, well, we know about the history of Christian slavery and all the way, we know the history of what happened to Native Americans. The Pope sanctified killing them, genociding them because they were not considered proper human beings, even the Native Americans. So we know that this difference between ideal and lived reality is there in every culture, and the importance of prosperity and material mobility in this, because those who are prosperous can afford more mobility and better lifestyle for everybody. And when you have a small pie being fought for by a lot of people, then you have more exploitation opportunity. And you might think that even in Islam has no racism and prejudice and caste system or what Islam does. Islam has the Ashraf. You should search Ashraf, Ashraf, and Ajlaf. The Ashraf are said to be those Muslims in the Indian subcontinent who came from Arab, Persian, or Turkish origins. And the Ajlaf are those Indians who are converted to Islam. That's a racist, caste-oriented. And the Ashraf, which is the upper caste, are further divided into 4 categories. The highest Ashraf are Saids, who are only those people can be Saids who are direct descendants of the Prophet. Direct descendants of the Prophet. I once had a debate with